Greetings, everyone. I'm Del with Healing Frequencies Music, and we have another overview series here. And this one is about the frequencies of creation. And I'm going to do one long video and then just break it up into 7 separate videos, and we'll address each topic separately. And obviously, I have new information since I originally put out the Frequencies of Creation videos 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. After a while, you lose track of time. So I encourage you to check in the description below for the links to the blog posts of which I'm referring to, all of my sources, where I got the information. All of those sources are in the blog posts at the bottom of the blog posts. So without further ado, we are going to start number 1, which is all about patterns and cycles. There goes the cat on the scratching post. They always have to make themselves known. All righty. So I believe, here we go. And I'm going to make myself small. Hold on. There we go. We're going to go from the beginning. You know, it's a very good place to start. And that's where I say sing along now, right? All right. And what I meant to do was move my video, which I'm moving it to the top. The first video, again, is about finding patterns. And I found out in this process that whatever I'm looking for, if you can find a pattern or a cycle, then chances are you're going down the correct rabbit trail. And I'm going to show you places where we see patterns, as you can see, or cycles. Pi is an example of something that just goes on forever and ever. It's a pattern. How do you know if what you found fits within a pattern? Patterns are at the very core of our existence. Patterns repeat and are consistent. Cycles are, they function in a similar manner. Patterns are found in math, music, nature, the cosmos, art, movement, history. I didn't put that one in there. We can repeat history. We're even repeating the great year, which goes around every 25,000 years, and certain things happen at the change of each season, which is about every 2,000 years. You go into a next age. So there's patterns everywhere. But what I'm going to show you here are some patterns that we find in nature. The first one are fractals, which we see in the Mandelbrot set, and was first discovered by a man named Mandelbrot. And as you zoom in, here's an example of one of the arms on these, and you'll notice that inside that is another Mandelbrot set. So you keep zooming in and it just keeps repeating and repeating and repeating. I mean, if you think about it, shorelines and a lot of things in nature are fractals. Then we have the Fibonacci. And you can see that in conch shells. You can see it in, this looks like a hurricane. Here is the cosmos. Here is a cactus of sorts. This is a pine cone. I'm not sure what that is. That's a math thing, and that isn't necessarily something it's not my top understandable topic. Here we see patterns in nature. Here are 3 crop circles. And what those crop circles, if you have certain specific resonances, what those resonances create in a cymoscope, notice how close that is, each of these are, to the crop circle. So this is a 3-dimensional pattern, whereas this is 2-dimensional. Here are crystals that are in, ice crystals, and those are 2-dimensional patterns. Now, since I mentioned cymoscope, to the left is a cymoscope, which gives a 3-dimensional view of what something sounds like, okay? Or looks like, because, sound creates a shape. Here is a Chladni plate, which is 2-dimensional. two-dimensional, and you pour sand on it and you rub a violin bow on there, and it will create the shape that is in resonance with that plate. The higher the pitch, the more intricate the pattern is. Now you can see here on the left, we have two-dimensional shapes. So there's a Chladni plate on the right. And, you know, the sad thing is they don't necessarily say the frequencies. I can't read that writing. But the left, you see a turtle. So we know that turtle shapes are built on frequencies, and we don't necessarily know what the frequencies are because you have to have the right shape and the right thickness of the plate and all of those things, because all of that, you know, every Chladni plate is going to create a different shape based on how thick it is, how wide it is, the size, whether it's square, whether it's rectangle, whether it's oval, because they're all going to have their own resonant frequency and all the harmonics that go with it. Now here on the right, you're going to see these are musical notes, and I could tell they're in the 440 concert pitch using a CymaScope, which is a three-dimensional app. And I could play some of those notes for you. And the problem with the CymaScope is the pitch constantly adjusts and changes because the harmonics affect it. So I have no idea at which point these photos were taken during each of the notes being played. And I have a CymaScope app on my phone, and I pulled it up and I actually played F2, G2, A sharp 2. And there was a flash of a moment where I could see those shapes, but there were other shapes that were in there as well, because sound constantly moves. So in a real live CymaScope visual, the sound is going to morph as well. That means the picture is not going to stay exactly the same. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, here's the musical harmonic series. So you always have a fundamental pitch, and all of these other pitches come off of it. It's very similar to the Fibonacci. It just goes on and on and on and on forever. And each instrument or each voice or every tone, wherever it is created from, is going to have some of these harmonics, maybe all of them, and they're going to be in varying strengths. And here is another picture showing the harmonic series. And, you know, here is the fundamental, and here's divided in half. It's divided in thirds, into fourths, into fifths, all the way up until the point where you get up to here. Now, if you put these and make them look like a wave, you can look at that and say, that looks like a conch shell. So we know that conch shells are created using the musical harmonic series. I mean, there it is. There's a picture of it. So there's a pattern that we're seeing. Now, the last one is the musical letters, the Hebrew letters and their musical frequencies. If you take the standard gematria, which is right here, so there's the first 9 letters, here's the next 9 letters, and here's the last 9, and that's if you're using the final forms of Kaf, Mem, Nun, Pe, and Sadi. Look how close these pitches are to the gematria numbers. Now, people might say, well, how come it's not exact? Well, it's all going to depend on whether you're using equal temperament, whether you're using just intonation, whether you're using Verkler, whether you're using Pythagorean. And what I've put in here are the pitches for the A432 concert pitch in modified Pythagorean tuning. And this is as close as I could get. But when you're listening to 910 hertz versus 900 hertz, you can hardly hear the difference. But again, I'm not going to get into the musical details of that here. I do that in the blog posts, but this is just to show you we're seeing a pattern here, okay? Next, in the next video, we're going to explore how we see some of these patterns in the Big Bang, and how that continues in everything we do. And of course, I stopped the share because we're done with that part. And I knew and still know that as I continue to do my research with musical frequencies of whatever it is, once I find a pattern or once I find a cycle, then I know I'm on the right track. And there were a lot of people who gave me information on the musical frequencies of the Hebrew letters. And I'm like, where's the pattern? Where's the pattern? And I was seeing cantillations, which is when they're reading the Torah, they chant the cantillations, which is a musical style of singing the Torah. And the problem is it's not consistent. It just depends on where it falls within which word, where it falls within the sentence. That's not a pattern. So whenever I'm looking for something in my research, the first place I go is a pattern. And if I'm going down a rabbit trail and the pattern falls apart, I will put it on a shelf and it'll sit there until I can figure out where that's going, which is exactly what happened when I was working on the musical frequencies of the Hebrew letters. I worked on it for 8 years before I had it figured out. And here's the other thing when looking at patterns. If we have an interesting paradigm, we already have a set mindset on what we think something is going to look like, we're going to miss it, which I did with the musical frequencies of the Hebrew letters because I had an expectation that it was going to look a certain way. Once I got rid of that expectation, then I was able to see it. That's what a real scientist does, or a real researcher does. You have to put aside any personal agenda, any personal idea, and look at it from a perspective of all possibilities. Once we do that, then we're going to see the truth in whatever it is we're researching. That is how I moved forward with the frequencies of creation. So keep that in mind as you watch this video and the remaining 6 that come after this. So we'll see you in the Big Bang one. Enjoy.